y'all doing today? I couldn't him about his whole...
I have just as much. I usually say I pack like a woman.
I'm actually on my way to France. I'll be in and see the land of my ancestors, hear everyone speaking French. I wonder if my Cajun French will be understood. Will I be able to understand them? Man, I've never flown overseas before. I think I'm nervous. I'll miss Tammy, but man, what an adventure.
What if they misplace any of my gear? Flying 10 hours, Lord. I guess it could be worse. We could be flying in a prop. All this equipment. Jeez. Well, I hope they don't misplace anything. Maria said this is a cameraman's paradise. Yeah, well, I'm gonna make this baby sing. Sweet.
Paris. I can hardly wait. It's really great going instead of sending someone else. Sure hope the negotiations on the accords are going well. I have to make sure all the arrangements are made. It's going to be tough getting all the coverage we need. I have to change money. Can't forget to brief Bob and Rodney about Parisians. Paris.
Part de bonheur dont je connais la cause. C'est toi pour moi pour toi dans la vie. Tu me l'as dit, pas juré pour la vie.
We're here. What's jet lag when Paris awaits? The capital of France since the year 987, the city lies nestled in the northern part of the country along the River Seine. It's the cultural, fashion, and business center of France. Some would argue it's the art and fashion capital of the world. Like every other visitor to this magic city, we headed straight toward the Arc de Triomphe and the Eiffel Tower.
Driving in Paris is definitely not like anything you'll encounter in Acadiana. Not even Lafayette's Johnston Street the week before Christmas has this kind of traffic. We approach the Arc de Triomphe down the Avenue de Charles de Gaulle. Once around the circle, or étoile as they're called here, and we're headed down the Avenue de la Grande Armée and straight for the Paris landmark.
The Arc de Triomphe is the world's best-known tomb of the unknown soldier. Considered a historical and national monument, security is always tight, and commercial cameras like TV-10s are banned from shooting. Luckily, they told us that after we had gotten some video. A tip for those of you who may be first-time visitors to the city: do not try to cross the étoile around the Arc. You'll take your life in your hands. This is the craziest traffic situation you'll ever face. Everything goes, no holds barred.
I guess I won my stripes, having maneuvered our car through this maze not once but 4 times. Anyway, went on foot, take the tunnel, which takes you under and not through the traffic. The monument is a panorama of French history, or at least that part of it spent in the battlefield. The eternal light is an unabashed tribute to the men and women who have fought France's battles. And always, the flame is surrounded by fresh flowers.
Our next destination, the Eiffel Tower, of course. We decided it was time to brave the next French challenge, the metro. Actually, the underground trains are convenient, inexpensive, well-maintained, and pretty easy to figure out, at least at this time of day. At night after 11, entire sections close down, and you may find that you can't get there from here. But this time around, all we had to do was ask.
Numéro 6.
Ouais, la station s'appelle Bir-Hakeim. Bir-Hakeim.
There it is. The first sight of the Eiffel Tower is unexplainable. You know, seeing something you have always heard about, and there it is in the flesh, or girder in this case.
One of the most recognized symbols in the world, the Eiffel Tower soars 984 feet into the air. It's made of iron and was designed by the French engineer Alexandre Gustave Eiffel in 1823 as an exhibition for the 1889 Paris World Fair. When the exhibition ended, the tower remained on the left bank of the Seine. Work was completed in 1923, but of course, constant maintenance goes on. 2 restaurants lie nestled between the girders, one rather average, the other a higher class. If you're not traveling with a television camera, you might want to ride one of the lifts, which rise slowly up each leg of the Eiffel Tower. They carry visitors to various levels of the tower, and from the top, you have Paris at your feet. And by the way, the best view is at night.
That's because as imposing as Paris is by day, it's when the sun goes down that one discovers what's called the City of Lights.
Et ça me fait quelque chose. Il est entré dans mon cœur une part de bonheur dont je connais la cause. C'est toi pour moi pour toi dans la vie. Tu me l'as dit, pas juré pour la vie.
We arrived in Brussels only to find out that taxis were not running. It seems that every day from 8 to 10 in the morning, all taxis are on strike. But nothing lasts forever, and we were on our way to the long-awaited ceremony, which marked the end of 3 days of tough negotiations and the signing of the accord, which would ensure the future of French in Louisiana.
There was a special feeling in watching these agreements formalized. French is at the very heart of my source. It is my family. To know that this paves the way for countless others to learn and cherish the language which has been a part of me since birth is very special.
This ensures at least another 3-year commitment by our strongest supporter of the French programs in Louisiana, the French community of Belgium, or as they call themselves, la Communauté Française de la Belgique. This makes us assured that as we enter the next century, we're going to have the technical, the financial, and the educational assistance to continue the job that Codefil began in 1968 to assure continuation of French in Louisiana.
The fact now in 1996 and into the next century, as Warren said, that we are assured of getting 70 Belgian teachers, scholarships, educational materials, and we even negotiated yesterday in Liège with the minister. It had been left out in the negotiations. We were able to renegotiate a pedagogic assistant that was very important to the Belgian teachers. When they're going to have a problem in Louisiana, they have this assistant that they'll be able to go to. We now have in excess of 90,000 students in French programs in Louisiana. The French immersion program has grown to over 2,000, and we think that exactly what we dreamed about in 1984 has come to fruition in 96. And hopefully by the year 2000, we'll be able to expand the French immersion program.
The accord signed, it was time for the Louisiana delegation and its French counterparts to seal the hard-hitting talks with lighter conversation over a good lunch. But the work was far from over. Dr. Maureen Brennan headed for a meeting on enlarging and enhancing the scope of Festival International. It was good to end a satisfying day like this with a walking tour of the beautiful Belgian city of Brussels. The country's capital, it lies in the province of Brabant, on the Seine River. It's not surprising that everyone speaks English or that this nation is a major contributor to the development of French in Louisiana. It prides itself on being a bilingual community, Flemish and French, but most of those we met also spoke English. It serves as the executive headquarters of the European Economic Community, and as cities go, it's magnificent.
Madame Broussard, où se cache-t-elle?
Just a few days later, we found ourselves in a similar setting as the French government and our delegation ended their negotiations with the signing of a like accord and the promise of much more.
It's amazing how much work goes into getting two nations, or in this case, a nation and a state, to preserve a language, a culture.
I think that we're going to continue to seek ways to not forget that really what motivates us is emotional. But what will sustain the movement for the long term has to be an economic effort to relate our French heritage to a way that young people and all people of Louisiana can improve their lives economically through cultural tourism and the various programs that we've discussed with the French government.
All of this has come to fruition now, and we feel that we have strengthened the French immersion as regular as the elementary, secondary French programs in Louisiana. We hope that this continues to build bridges to the future.
What are the advantages of being bilingual? Meet a young Lafayette native who graduated from the Episcopal School of Acadiana, went on to Paris on a scholarship from Rice University.
I'm an example of someone who was not necessarily taught by my parents, but was given an appreciation for the language by a lot of the French programs in the schools, and was interested enough to take it to this level, and so I think it works.
And the meetings and negotiations continued. Hello there. Standing outside the Office of Foreign Affairs here in Paris, and you've just come out from a very important meeting that hopefully will open the doors to Louisiana attending the conference in Hanoi next year. Warren, what came out of the meeting?
As a result of the accords being signed yesterday, we received an invitation to meet with the director of the Foreign Ministry of France in charge of American affairs, and he has assured us that his government will sponsor Louisiana's presence at the World Francophone Summit, which will be in Hanoi, Vietnam, next year.
We know that we're going to have a wonderful delegation, particularly Mr. Perrin, who does an excellent job of communicating very well that Louisiana needs to be part of the French-speaking world and that we want to participate wholeheartedly.
Les parties de la flèche avec les premiers colons.
Les habitants de la flèche.
Les habitants de la flèche. Comment ça s'appelle? Des flèches.
Des fléchois.
Des fléchois. Des fléchois. OK. OK, mais merci pour votre tracas.
Merci. Au revoir.
Our stopover in La Flèche, where settlers embarked on the River Loire beginning in 1640 to settle in the New World, and the subsequent parties which embarked under the leadership of the man who was to settle Montreal, was a very special treat for Bob.
Knowing that some of my ancestors may have lived in this community, may have braved the dangerous crossing to an unknown land. Even going down the Loire in these flimsy boats seems a remarkable accomplishment. I wonder if we would be that brave. Just the possibility that my forebears may have lived here is terrific. It's a feeling of completeness that everyone should experience, returning to your roots. The French language over here, the Cajun French language, it's not an outside. I mean, I've been communicating with people from Paris and everything, but since we've gotten outside of Paris and made our way further south to La Flèche, as we mentioned earlier, one of the ports of debarkation for the people who later become Acadians, I really feel at home here. It's almost like I'm at home.
It's kinfolk. I noticed that the language is easier to understand as far as you're concerned.
Easier.
You get so excited when you walk up to people and talk with them.
In fact, I think that goes both ways, because it seems like they're understanding me. It's easier for them to understand me, and I also have an easier time of understanding them.
For now, it's time to travel. Travel to the port of Nantes, from where the soon-to-be Acadians left for Canada. It was in this harbor that they left their small boats and boarded the ships to cross the Atlantic.
Bob Moore, comment ça va? Bob Moore.
Imagine our delight when we had the opportunity to meet and sit down and talk with Floyd Saulnier's cousins. Vincent Saulnier and his daughter Anne were there to continue their genealogical quest.
We are all from the same roots. I met a lady that was who's in charge of the park at Grand Pré, and her name was, she saw me sign in the register. She showed me her name tag was Nora, S-A-U-L-N-I-E-R. So I says, Nora, do you know your genealogy? And she says, yes. I said, who is the oldest Saulnier that you know that you descend from? She just volunteered, Louis Saulnier et Louise Bastineau. Je dis, mes cousines, viens voir.
And you've been watching your father do this now, for many, many years. Mm-hmm. How can you describe the victories, or, whenever the new finds or whatever, have you sort of like taken it up also?
Well, I have a very deep interest in history. As you can imagine, living and growing up with someone like my father, who's quite the historian. And I can remember at age 16 sitting in the car outside of a courthouse in France with my father walking outside holding a piece of paper, shaking it as he joyously found yet another group of ancestors. And he continues to find more and more ancestors, even on this trip, you know, almost 30 years later. So it's wonderful, and I live in Dallas now, and I am very, very proud to be a Cajun and always will be.
How long is this work going to continue? Will it ever end?
Until I die.
And then it'll continue.
That's right.
Yeah, my father was proud to be an Acadian, a Cajun, when very few other people were. A lot of people were very ashamed of being Acadian. They were not with it, but they didn't know why. And today, it's the in thing. People are real proud to be Acadian, a Cajun, and they still don't know why. But there's a lot to be proud of, believe me.
The conversation was even more interesting after Jean-Francois dropped by. He's a friend of Mr. Saulnier's, who's a linguist and helps Mr. Saulnier with his study of genealogy.
The difference between the French and the Acadian or Cajun is that the Cajun is the slowest language. They are not speaking fast, but I think that in the south of America, everybody is speaking slow.
The festival in the Paris suburb of Suresnes was the focus of the search for new attractions for Festival International.
Ça va les gars? Super! Wow, j'ai fait une photo, c'est pas mon stage! Les gars, oh le putain de contre-jour! Les gars, là, j'ai fait des copains! Vous pourriez vous resserrer, c'est pas tout le monde!
We will be watching all of the acts, and we will be looking forward to bringing some of these acts to Lafayette and Festival International de Louisiane.
Encore, bien merci, et on va essayer d'attraper tous les groupes qui vont d'être ici après jouer aujourd'hui.
Déjà, il y a un groupe qui est venu au Festival de Lafayette, qui est venu, c'est la compagnie Le Carillon,
oui,
qui était déjà venu à Lafayette.
The hospitality of these people is wonderful. They are open and generous and very willing to share their life with strangers. But you know, the food takes a little getting used to when you're used to rice and gravy. I have to call home and make sure a good Cajun shrimp gumbo, like only Tammy can make, is waiting.
Maria Placer. Elle place au-dessus de tout le champagne, les élèves le Cabernet Sauvignon et les Bourgognes. Maria Placer. Il travaille à la direction de la publicité du Figaro, dont la devise est de Beaumarchais.
It was a special moment for this reporter as a treat arranged by Dr. Maureen Brennan and the director of La Centre Internationale in Lafayette, Philippe Gustin, lured us to the vineyards of Suresnes. This area is known for its fine white wine, a vintage which dates back to the Romans. It was here that I was invited to become a member of the exclusive wine tasting society. It was heady stuff, and I don't mean the wine, to stand there among these connoisseurs and be inducted.
J'aime le champagne, et c'est formidable.
En avant, marche!
Regardez!
The evening then focused on Dr. Maureen Brennan and her search for auditions to Festival International. This time we experienced the magic of theater, in which a young director has transformed the Guatemalan culture into gripping drama. One of the main actors, by the way, is the grandson of Georges Jean Raymond Pompidou, French statesman and prime minister who succeeded Charles de Gaulle as president of France in 1969. And then the grand night for Maureen, when as president of France États-Unis, she presided over a reception at the residence of U.S. Ambassador to France, Pamela Harriman, and promoted the sole chapter of the organization outside of France, which brings a different quality to relationships between the two countries. It's such a unique sort of organization. What is the heart of it? Why is the formation of it so important to further the relations between France and the United States?
Well, because it's a personal connection. We have a lot of connections that are related to business and to cultural exchanges and to education, but they're all project-oriented, and we've had a lot of meetings this week, but they're all business, and they don't leave enough time for some real person-to-person contact, and that's what we need. We need to get to know one another as individuals and not as business entities or agencies or arts organizations. So I think that personal contact is what's so critical.
Congratulations on a very big night for you.
Thank you.
It must be true that all great artists come to Paris, because who should we run into but Ernest Gaines?
I'm enjoying myself here very, very much, and we have a wonderful apartment. We live in the Montparnasse area, and I am at the same time trying to get some writing done, yes. And as Hemingway once said, that if you cannot write in Paris, you can't write, and I think it's an ideal place to write, with all the brasseries there, and just the walk. It's a great walking city. It's something to read after a long, hard day of work. You can just walk and get all of this out of you, and and you can relax yourself and start back the next day. It is the greatest city I know of to write in.